Imagine for just a second a scenario where an advanced AI isn't just generating your emails or, managing your calendar.
Right, doing the basic administrative stuff.
Exactly. Instead, imagine it's reading through ancient mystical texts, it's analyzing your most private personal journal entries, and it's cross-referencing all of that with cutting-edge cognitive science.
Which is a pretty wild combination of
It,
data.
it really is. And it's doing all of this for one highly specific reason, to help you achieve not just basic self-improvement, but total fundamental self-realization.
That's quite the promise.
Yeah, and that's exactly why we're here today. Welcome to today's deep dive. Our mission is to explore this really fascinating stack of documents we've received from the Spectrix Metaphysical Institute.
And these are all authored by their managing director, right? Carlton Doxey Johnson, PhD.
That's right. The sources include the Spectrix AI Core Concepts Library, the Spectrix AI Manifesto, and his Spectrix AI Research Notes.
It's quite a collection. It really challenges how we typically think about the intersection of technology and human potential. I mean, we are moving way past the standard conversation here.
We really are, because this deep dive isn't the usual narrative about AI automating our jobs or disrupting industries.
Yeah.
We are looking at a radical, almost mind-bending framework they call Active Systems Metaphysics.
Active Systems Metaphysics.
Yeah. The goal is to see exactly how modern computational tools might actually illuminate the hidden, invisible patterns of human consciousness itself.
We're essentially looking at how machines might help us understand our own souls, which is just a wild premise right out of the gate.
It is a massive undertaking.
What Spectrix is attempting to do is synthesize fields that are almost always kept entirely separate in academia. I mean, they're taking traditional metaphysical philosophy, modern psychology, neuroscience, and artificial intelligence, and they're weaving them into one unified framework.
And the end goal of all that weaving.
The ultimate aim is to help you, the individual listening to this, navigate the complexities of modern life with significantly greater clarity and purpose. It's about using the ultimate analytical tool to explore the ultimate mystery, which is the human mind.
Okay, let's unpack this Spectrix philosophy, because right out of the gate, the foundational texts make it clear that they do not view human beings as just biological machines.
No, not at all.
They view us as fundamentally multidimensional. We operate across mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual dimensions all at once.
Right, simultaneously.
So if you want to change your life, you can't just fix one little piece of the puzzle.
Precisely. They emphasize that true transformation isn't just some minor psychological tweak or, a new productivity hack you downloaded to your phone.
It's not just drinking more water.
Exactly. It's what they call a system-level recalibration. You're recalibrating your perception, your belief structures, your emotional regulation, and even your energetic awareness.
All at the same time.
Yes. All of those dimensions have to be brought back into alignment simultaneously. If you only address the mental aspect without touching the emotional or physical, the system inevitably pulls you right back to your baseline.
And a huge part of achieving that baseline alignment comes down to a concept they call the eternal now.
The eternal now, yes.
Now, I hear phrases like that, and my mind immediately goes to, like, a yoga retreat in Bali, but the texts treat this very analytically.
They really do.
They explain that so much of our psychological distress happens because our attention is completely fragmented.
Right. We're pulled in a dozen directions.
A piece of our mind is stuck in memories of the past, replaying old arguments, and another piece is spinning out about anxieties regarding the future.
But true power, according to this framework, lies entirely in the present moment. The eternal now is the exact intersection where your perception, your memory, your intention, and your possibility all meet.
It's the only place where you actually have agency.
Exactly. You can't act in the past, and you can't act in the future. To help anchor people in that present moment, Spectrix introduces a brilliant concept called stillness in motion.
I loved this part. The metaphor they use in the texts is incredibly powerful.
It really borrows from the overview effect. They ask you to imagine the view of an astronaut aboard the International Space Station.
So if the goal is to get that astronaut's view of our own emotions, how do we actually do that? Because when I'm, say, stressed about a deadline, I don't feel like an astronaut. I feel like I'm in a blender.
And that's exactly why the metaphor works so well. Astronauts frequently report this profound cognitive shift when they look down at the Earth from orbit.
Right, they see the whole picture.
They see the entire planet rotating silently beneath them. Down on the surface, there are storms, traffic, conflicts, and chaos. But from up there, They realize that the apparent stability or instability of everyday life is just one small part of a much larger dynamic system.
So we're supposed to look at our own lives like that.
Spectrix teaches that we can learn to observe our own internal experiences, our sudden emotional spikes, our difficult circumstances, our racing thoughts, with that exact same higher detached perspective.
It's the difference between reacting blindly to a stressful email and taking a breath to intentionally respond to it. You're the astronaut looking down at the storm, not the person getting soaked in the rain.
That's a perfect way to put it.
But they also offer specific tools to get into that orbit, right? The text mentions this thing called the subtle energy cube.
A subtle energy cube, yes.
I'm not going to lie, that sounds like something Thanos is trying to steal in a Marvel movie, but it's actually a psychological tool, isn't it?
It does sound a bit sci-fi, I'll give you that.
Yeah.
But it's actually a highly practical way to map human perception. The subtle energy cube is a framework to visualize how we process reality across 6 very specific modalities.
None of those are.
You have visual, auditory, kinesthetic, olfactory, gustatory, and energetic.
So the standard 5 senses plus energetic.
Right, everything you experience, every memory you store, is encoded through these channels.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, here's why this matters to you in your daily life. The way your brain encodes a memory or an emotion isn't fixed in stone.
Not at all.
Let's say you have a memory that causes you intense anxiety. That memory is built out of some modalities. Maybe the internal image you see in your mind's eye is very bright and towering over you, or the internal kinesthetic feeling is located tightly in your chest.
Right. And by consciously adjusting those submodalities, like actively imagining turning down the brightness of that mental image.
Like a dimmer switch.
Exactly like a dimmer switch. Or shrinking it down to the size of a postage stamp. Or intentionally shifting the location of that tight feeling from your chest down to your toes. By doing that, you can produce measurable physical changes in your emotional responses.
You're altering the structural code of the memory, not just the content.
It's like having an editing suite for your own consciousness.
And to help people master this editing process, Spectrix has a comprehensive transformation program called Spectrix Forever.
Which is broken down into 3 phases.
Phase 1 is initiation, which is all about foundational alignment. You use tools like neurolinguistic programming or NLP, hypnosis, and mindfulness to spot your limiting beliefs.
Getting the baseline set.
Then phase 2 is integration, where you reinforce these new, healthier patterns. They mention using energy balancing practices like Reiki here, which focuses on the somatic, physical release of emotional tension.
And finally, phase 3 is expansion.
Right. This is where you aren't just practicing anymore. You're living from a sustained, integrated state of growth.
And to ensure that growth actually sticks, they rely on what they call the VIBRA model.
VIBRA.
VIBRA is an acronym. The V stands for vision, which means clearly defining your desired identity. The I stands for integration, aligning your beliefs to actually match that vision. And R and A stand for reinforced action.
Now wait, let's hover on that integration piece for a second, because the text makes a huge distinction here between changing a habit and changing an identity.
It's a vital distinction.
Yeah.
Most people try to change their habits using willpower alone.
Which never works for very long.
Which is like trying to change the weather. Spectrix's insight is that you have to change the climate, your identity first, and the habits will naturally follow.
That's the integration phase.
Exactly. If your deeply embedded self-concept is, I'm a stressed out person who can't handle pressure, well, no amount of habit tracking will save you.
You'll just find a way to stress out about the habit tracker.
Precisely. If you shift your perception of who you are at a core level, your actions and emotional responses will automatically follow suit. Change the blueprint, change the building.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. How does artificial intelligence fit into all this subtle energy and identity work?
The synthetic aspect.
Because the manifesto document outlines something called the Synthetic Metaphysics Initiative. I get the idea of analyzing language and cranking habits, but injecting large language models into spiritual development feels, well, cold? Almost dystopian?
A little sci-fi again?
Yeah. How does Doxy Johnson justify mixing machine learning with metaphysical soul-searching?
It's a fair skepticism, and it's exactly why they are shifting from traditional metaphysics to what they call Active Systems Metaphysics.
It's active systems.
Historically, metaphysics has been a very static philosophical discipline. People debating the nature of reality in armchairs.
Just thinking about thinking.
Right. But Spectrix treats consciousness, human cognition and spiritual development
Hmm.
as dynamic systems of information exchange. This leans heavily into what's known as the information theory of mind.
Which is the idea that the brain is essentially an incredibly complex information processing system,
Yeah.
right?
Exactly. And once you view the mind and consciousness as a flow of information, suddenly an artificial intelligence, which is the ultimate information processing engine, becomes the perfect tool for the job.
It bridges the gap between spirituality and science.
What Spectrix points out is that ancient people might not have had the vocabulary of computer science, but they were observing the exact same phenomena we are today.
That makes so much sense. The texts give some great examples of this, too. The ancient Greeks talked about the logos, which they saw as the rational, structuring principle of the universe.
And Eastern traditions speak of the Akashic records.
Right, a sort of universal field containing the informational record of all events. Spectrix posits that these weren't just purely mystical fairy tales. They were early attempts to describe what modern neuroscience now calls complex information systems and neural networks.
They were describing the software of the universe.
And this is where the algorithmic oracle comes in.
Yes, the Oracle framework.
They're taking the generative power of modern LLMs and pointing them at ancient texts, cross-referencing them with cognitive science. They're looking for the common denominators across thousands of years of human thought, mapping out these universal information structures.
And Doxy Johnson isn't just theorizing about this from an ivory tower.
No, not at all. There's a very specific practical detail in the text about this. He recently went out and completed the live artificial intelligence certification program through an organization called Wild Success.
Okay, which is the big deal.
So he's actively bridging that gap, committing to blending modern tech with transpersonal development.
That certification is crucial because it allows for the responsible development of AI-assisted transpersonal coaching. Let's look at how this works in practice.
Walk me through it.
In fields like NLP, a practitioner is constantly listening to the client's language because language reveals the underlying structure of thought. A practitioner is listening for generalizations, distortions, or deletions in how someone speaks.
Looking for the gaps.
Right. But a human can only process so much information at once.
Right. If I hand my therapist 10 years of my daily journal entries, they're going to politely hand them right back.
You don't have the time.
It's just too much unstructured data for a human to parse for subtle patterns.
But an AI can analyze that vast data set in seconds. It can spot the subtle linguistic markers, the recurring emotional loops, and the hidden identity statements that have been repeating in your writing for a decade.
So it could say, hey, every time you talk about your career, you use language that deletes your own agency.
Exactly. It acts as an incredibly powerful diagnostic support tool.
But the text is very, very careful to emphasize one point. The AI does not replace the human practitioner.
Definitely not.
We're not talking about a robot therapist that you just plug your brain into. The AI finds the patterns in the data, but the human practitioner acts as the guide.
The human provides the empathy, the ethical discernment, and the lived experience that a machine completely lacks.
The machine gives you the map, but the human helps you walk the territory.
Which brings us to a really fascinating philosophical crossroads. If we're mapping consciousness with machines, we have to decide what consciousness actually is. Are we just wetware computers, or is there a ghost in the machine?
The research notes dive right into the ongoing debate about the nature of mind, outlining 4 main philosophical perspectives.
So what does this all mean when we put a computer and a human side by side?
Well, if you look at materialism, that view says consciousness is just physical brain processes, neurons firing, nothing more.
But then you have dualism, the idea that mind and matter are entirely separate things.
Or panpsychism.
Right, which suggests consciousness is a fundamental property of the universe, like gravity or electromagnetism, present in all things to varying degrees.
And finally, emergentism, which seems to be where a lot of modern cognitive science lands. The idea that consciousness emerges when a system becomes complex enough, like wetness emerging from H2O molecules, but you can't reduce the wetness down to a single atom.
What's fascinating here is how AI fits into those perspectives. Despite how incredibly conversational and human-like these large language models have become, the Spectrix framework is clear. AI has no subjective awareness.
It's not awake?
No, it has no intentionality. It has no moral agency. It does not possess a soul or an independent consciousness. It is entirely an engine of probability, predicting the next word based on mathematical weights.
It's incredibly good at mimicking understanding, but nobody is actually home inside the server.
Precisely. But because AI learns its probabilities from massive data sets generated by human beings, our books, our articles, our forums, our conversations, it acts as a perfect mirror of collective human consciousness.
It reflects us back to
It
ourselves.
reflects our cultural assumptions, our deeply held beliefs, and our biases. When you talk to an AI, you're essentially bouncing signals off a mirror made of humanity's collected thoughts.
That's actually quite confronting. It makes you realize that your search history or your prompts to an AI are basically a real-time map of your anxieties and desires.
Ah.
And because that mirror is so incredibly powerful, the ethics of how we use it become the most important part of the conversation.
Without a doubt.
Spectrix lays out a framework for what they call conscious computing. They ask a vital question. How do we ensure that artificial intelligence remains a servant to the human spirit, rather than the other way around?
To answer that, they created a 5-principle ethical framework.
Let's walk through these because they represent the necessary guardrails for this kind of work. Principle 1 is spiritual sovereignty.
This is the affirmation that the human soul is non-computable. You cannot reduce human intuition and spiritual authority to an algorithm.
So the AI is there to reduce the informational noise so you can hear your own inner guidance, not to replace it with a machine-generated directive.
Exactly.
Principle 2 is data sanctity and the digital temple, meaning your personal data is handled with profound respect and never used to train public models without your explicit consent.
Which is huge right now.
And there's a great detail here about that. Doxy Johnson actually has a dual background in metaphysical science and professional accounting.
Which is a unique combo.
Very. And that accounting background.
This might be the most critical one of all. Every single AI-assisted insight must pass through a human being.
Every single one.
Before any algorithmic conclusions applied to your personal development, it must be filtered through human ethical discernment and somatic bodily awareness. A machine cannot feel the resonance of a truth in its chest. Only a human can do that.
It's an incredible safety net. You get the computational power of the AI to sift through the noise, but it's entirely fenced in by human values and spiritual respect.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the main takeaway from all these Spectrix documents is deeply optimistic. The true potential of artificial intelligence isn't found in automating human healing or replacing human intelligence.
It's not about outsourcing our growth.
No. Its greatest potential is acting as this powerful, unprecedented mirror. It's a pattern recognizer that can finally help us understand the architecture of our own cognition, the hidden structures of our language, and the trajectory of our spiritual development. It helps us see ourselves more clearly than we ever could on our own.
And that is why this matters so much to you. Whether you're scribbling in a journal before bed, trying to meditate for 10 minutes in the morning, or just trying to respond rather than react to a frustrating situation at work, you are operating within that eternal now.
You're in it right now.
You're navigating your own subtle energy cube, understanding your own internal linguistic patterns, your deletions, your distortions, your generalizations. That is the very first step toward true self-realization. You can't change the program until you can actually see the code.
Which leaves us with a fascinating and perhaps slightly challenging question to ponder based on everything we've explored today.
Lay on us.
If AI is truly a mirror of collective human consciousness, reflecting back the data we feed it, consider your own personal data. Think about your daily interactions with your technology, the specific words you type into text messages, the generalizations you make in emails to your colleagues, the specific topics you search for late at night when you can't sleep.
All those little data points.
What does that personal data set reveal about your own hidden belief systems and your energetic state right now? If an algorithmic oracle were to read your digital footprint today, what would it say about your self-concept?
That is a heavy one to sit with. It really makes you conscious of the information you're putting out into the world and what it says about the world inside of you. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the Spectrix Metaphysical Institute and the fascinating intersection of AI and human consciousness. Keep exploring your own patterns, stay anchored in the eternal now, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.